How are you?
Good. I just wanted to let you know that I'm driving home from work.
No problem. Just don't look at your screen.
Okay.
Such a nice day, huh? Hi, Kara. Thanks so much for joining. We're going to get started in a minute or two.
Is it just me right now?
I think Leanne is going to be joining us. She's driving, and I have a feeling she just dropped it by accident.
Okay.
But we'll see. It's also just turning 5 o'clock. It's also beautiful out, so.
Yes, I was working outside and, I know I'm not up there, but I was working outside. So.
Yeah, it's like dreamy, early summer weather. So we'll see. But we're recording, so we'll send it out to people. You can make sure you can have all the pressure to ask all the really good questions, Kara.
I mean, they're just going to be Kara focused. So
when I'm flying,
we'll have our mask on. Even if we weren't going to camp, we would still have our mask on a plane.
Early, you made it. Thank you so much. Hi, David. Thanks for joining.
Hi. How are you?
Had to take a quick break at work. I'm sorry. How are you?
Appreciate it so much. Good to see you. We are going to get started in just a minute.
Okay.
Thanks for making it back, Leanne. We are going to get started in just a minute. So that we can record this, we are going to be streaming on YouTube. So if you would prefer not to be streamed on YouTube, you can just turn your camera off. This is just the easiest way for us to get this accessible for any families that can't make it. So we'll start in just a minute, and I'm going to go over our protocols for this summer, and just really happy to answer questions and hear from families. And everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. It's so nice out. Plus my home office turned into storage for windows for my house. So it's no longer a good virtual meeting location for just a few months. But well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I really want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Lily Mercoliano Easton, and I'm the camp director at Camp Wawa Segoya. I have a slide presentation that I'm going to pull up, and I'm just going to share with you. I'll start with a summary and give just a little bit of background in how we've thought about health practices and safety protocols at camp during the pandemic. And then I'll do a summary, and then I will go into more detail. At any point along the way, please just interrupt however is easiest for you. I probably shouldn't say interrupt because it really wouldn't be an interruption. If you have a question, you can unmute and ask it. You can put it in the chat. It's very helpful to hear from families the questions that are on your mind. With everything with overnight camp, there really is no question that shouldn't be asked. And then especially as we think about overnight camp in a pandemic, we really want to know anything that's confusing, questions you have, and what we can do to make the preparation for camp easier. So I'm going to pull up the slideshow and we will get started. Can everybody see that, I think?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. I will ask, Kara, can you see the chat?
Yes, I don't see anything there though.
Do you mind just letting me know if there is a question that pops up in the chat? I've realized when I use this screen and I'm streaming, It's like, if I try to monitor the chat, also ends up in the middle of my screen. So,
Yes, I will watch it.
okay, thank you. All right. So I just want to start with our mission statement because we really have built our approach to safety at camp from the place of, what it is that we're trying to do at camp every year. And so we build a community of youth and young adults that fosters healthy living, cooperation, leadership development, and lifelong friendships in a rustic outdoor setting. These are our main goals at camp. If you come out to camp, you'll see all over the place. Our number one rule is to have fun. Then we really look at our program to think about ways for youth to try new things and make friends, develop their personal expression. We have an idea at camp that you may be familiar with other outdoor programs, which is challenge by choice. So that really is the idea that there will be challenges presented to you, opportunities to take risks, and it's really the camper's choice at what level they want to challenge, how long they want to do the challenge, and that sort of thing. We do a lot around appreciating our natural surroundings and taking care of our historic facility and the land that our camp is on. And then as an overnight camp, there's such a huge focus on how we live together, being welcoming and inclusive, and really most of every day gets really centered around joy and what we do as a community and how we help each other at camp. So when it comes to our safety protocols, we use several resources. First of all, we're licensed by our local health department out of the state of Massachusetts. So I will reference a few places in here where Massachusetts has guidance when it comes to the response and management of COVID-19. COVID-19 remains what's called a reportable disease in the state of Massachusetts. So any positive cases or exposures to COVID-19 that happen at camp is something that then we use Massachusetts state response protocols for and also manage our approach with our local health department. We also seek the guidance of both the American Camp Association, who has been working very closely with the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, throughout the pandemic. The ACA started a whole task force on proper camp protocols in very early 2020. So they've been a real guiding force. Then we're part of the Massachusetts Camping Association, which is really our local camp association. Our healthcare is managed by Nella Stoltz. She's been our healthcare consultant for numerous years now, I think about 7 years. She's been an incredible support through the pandemic. And she is the person who really manages the day-to-day with our camp nurses who are out at camp. I like to share this Swiss cheese respiratory virus defense model image with families. We started using this last year, and I think it really is the best visual representation for the approach that we took last year successfully at camp, and that we just really looked at what modifications made sense for this summer. So the Swiss cheese virus approach did not start with COVID-19. It's really looking at the best way to respond to a respiratory virus to both mitigate any type of risk, control any spread, and respond if there is the presence of the virus. So the image is really just showing those green dots, which would be the virus coming in, and recognizing that when you're really dealing with a respiratory virus, there's no one response method that's going to be 100% effective. Instead, what we're thinking about is layering together many different forms of taking caution, of having good hygiene, things like vaccines, how we stay healthy at camp, really taking into account the ventilation we have at camp, being able to do so much programming outside, and then also things like quarantine and isolation, which I'll get more into detail today, if we do find that we have the virus at camp. So here's a summary of our policies for this summer. After I go over the summary, I'm going to break this out into different sections and get more into detail into how we're going to be approaching before campers come to camp, how we'll be doing drop off, what it will look like standard wise during a session, what will happen if a camper has symptoms of COVID-19, what happens if someone has COVID-19, and what happens if anyone is exposed to COVID-19 at camp. So we'll go through all of that, but this just gives you kind of the overarching big picture. So when it comes to this summer, the CDC has really encouraged camps to focus on this idea of looking regionally at whatever can be done to take caution before coming to camp, and to really just think about any tools we have at our disposal to limit the ability of COVID-19 to come to camp. And then the next really key piece is to be monitoring for COVID-19 at camp. Things like looking for symptoms, and really just like staying on top of our camp health and hygiene. And then the last piece is to respond as swiftly as we possibly can with quarantine and isolation if we do have COVID-19 at camp. So we want to encourage everybody who's participating in camp this summer to get vaccinated and to take precautions prior to coming to camp. So we'll be sending out a list of common strategies for families for the 10 days before coming to camp. And that's going to be things like, if you're traveling, to make sure that you wear a mask, to test before you travel, to test after you travel, and things like that. If your camper is going to be out of the house in other programming, which we know is going to be really common this summer, we want to encourage families to think about how they can engage in programming that will limit the possibility that your camper will either test positive for COVID before camp or potentially bring COVID to camp, and things like that. We will be requiring 2 rounds of tests before campers enter a camper cabin. So the first test will be a PCR lab test. That will happen like some pediatricians' offices will do it, urgent cares, some urgent cares will have them. And then also we have a list of pharmacies that you can schedule drive-through tests for. Those need to happen 72 to 48 hours, or I should probably say 48 to 72 hours before camp. Last year, people were most successful doing them on the Thursday before camp. I do want to remind people though, that you want to check on when you'll get the results back. So if you have concerns about results, you should do the test on Wednesday before. The exception to the PCR testing will be if your camper has had COVID-19 within 90 days of coming to camp. So if they have had COVID-19, then we'll ask that you do a rapid antigen test the day before camp. And that's because you can still test positive on that PCR test. So we're not asking families to PCR test a camper who has had COVID within 90 days of coming to camp. And then we'll be focusing on hygiene, sanitation, and symptom monitoring every day at camp, and using antigen tests at camp if there are symptoms. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that works. I also just want to highlight our entire facility is extremely well ventilated. There is not an airtight building at camp. We're a 3-season facility and is very rustic. So that works in our favor. And on top of that, the largest parts of all of our program areas are our lake, all of our fields, our porch, and our entire main lodge are all outdoor areas. The lodge is covered, but it's like a huge covered pavilion. So we really do have the idea of outdoor programming in our favor. And then the last thing is that quarantine and isolation protocols are in place for responding to all COVID positive and exposed participants. And we'll talk about how that breaks down. In Massachusetts, if you are exposed to COVID-19 and you're not symptomatic, then the quarantine response will be different depending on if you're vaccinated or not. Any questions before we dive into it? All right. So before coming to camp, again, we want to encourage vaccination. If your camper is vaccinated, that COVID card should get uploaded along with the health profile when you do there's a window for your immunization schedules. Some pediatricians I've noticed are also now adding the COVID vaccine to like a standard list, and that's fine. If your pediatrician has added or was the one who administered the COVID vaccine and you have that on your child's immunization history, that's fine. Again, we'll be sending out some guidance for minimizing risk before coming to camp. We'll do the PCR tests. What's going to happen with the PCR test is you'll have a little window very similar to how you uploaded your physical or your immunizations. It's going to open up with a reminder on that Thursday before camp, and by Saturday at noon, you'll need to upload your negative results. So usually when you get the PCR tests, you get a text or an email notification once those results come in, and you're just going to take that form and you're going to upload it right up so that our nurse can review it. And there's that note about just not doing the PCR test if you've had COVID within 90 days. We do ask that you confirm in that little pop-up window the having COVID. You can reach out to me if you have questions. I've spoken with a few families about this. How you want to confirm the already having COVID in the last 90 days is going to depend on your pediatrician. So some families have the positive test result, like if you confirmed getting COVID through a PCR test. Other families have a note from their doctor that either, because you had a telehealth visit or you discussed it afterwards, or you could approach your doctor now and see what they're going to do. If you have any concerns about that, just reach out to me. I know from my own experience with my kids' pediatricians when we got COVID, that how you can confirm having COVID is going to be a little bit on a case-by-case basis with your pediatrician. All right. So we're going to do drive-through drop-off again this year, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of our strategies for limiting COVID exposure during drop-off. So again, we're going to ask that campers don't come to camp without uploading a negative PCR lab test result. And again, that does need to be on Saturday so that we can make sure to check everything and be ready to go on Sunday. Once you get to camp on Sunday, we're going to start drop-off at 2 p.m. Last year, we did the drop-off with timed arrivals. I'm hoping to eliminate that. It led to a bit of inconsistency, but we also got positive reviews. So I'll keep everybody updated if that changes, but for now, we're going to keep it at 2 p.m. You may arrive and have a line, and we'll just let you know that we do move through it as fast as we can. You'll just pull up behind the car in front of you, and we're able to get everybody through pretty efficiently, just keeping in mind that we have to do the rapid test, which takes 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of our drive-through process. Before you leave, you'll check in with our nurse, and we've really done good reflection on the drive-through drop-off to make sure that parents can talk to counselors before you leave. So you'll be able to drop off baggage, say goodbye to campers, get them off with their cabin mates, and then everybody will head down together as a cabin into those cabins and start getting unpacked. In terms of once we're at camp and things are off and running, on the very first day, we'll review all sorts of general ways that we stay safe and take care of each other at camp. This is not limited just to COVID and is a really normal part of our first day orientation. But part of that during the pandemic will be that, that we will review what to do if you have symptoms of COVID-19 and how to talk to your counselor about that. For the duration of our sessions, we'll continue to restrict our visitors. And so the only visitors we'll be having at camp will be any necessary visitors that are related to our camp license. And then we also will have some program volunteers, up to 8 this summer. And these will be vaccinated participants in non-cabin facing areas. So when we say non-cabin facing areas, we're really thinking about places where staff are not interacting with campers inside. So kitchen support volunteers has been a long part of our program for a while and really helps out tremendously in terms of us keeping our kitchen staff rotation going strong. We also have some volunteers who help on the waterfront. Similarly, that's a specialty area and helps a lot to have some folks on the weekend. And we'll have some select program activity support as well that will be part of that group of volunteers. We are bringing back trips for this summer, which we're very excited about. We'll be taking day hikes with the base camp program, and then both day and overnight hikes with the teen camp program. Our CIT program will be doing some day trips outside as part of their leadership training. And all of those trips will be outside and won't mix with the general public. This is always how we did trips. But last year, just with elevated concerns and the recommendation of the state, we also did not do these trips. For staff time off, we'll be doing training around minimizing their risk when they're off camp property and not on duty. We'll really be looking at that regionally on a week-by-week basis. For example, right now, the Berkshires has seen a spike in community spread, and so there is a list of community-based recommendations in terms of masking inside and things like that for anybody who's out in the general public. And the last thing, last summer we used a cohort schedule. So that was our cabin group staying together in one cabin group all day long for the first 10 days of camp. For this summer, we're not planning to implement that cohort schedule right from the jump. Instead, we want to really be able to look at on a session specific basis. So when it comes to cohorts, we're going to be looking at how long we need to implement them and when we need to implement them based on concerns in regards to spread. And really with the goal to return as much as possible to camper choice-led program schedule. There was still plenty of choice last summer, but it certainly was more restrictive since it's really normal for a cabin group of peer-aged kids to have a lot of different interests and want to do many different things at camp during the day. All right, so if we have symptoms at camp, first, I just really want to make sure that parents know that we will contact you if any symptoms arise. And also to just keep in mind that, of course, we all know that the COVID symptom list is really pretty general and includes like plenty of symptoms that happen really normally at camp in response to allergies, having any number of other viruses. So we'll contact you. That does not mean, you know, that we're panicking. I think it's really important for families to know that. It's just will be part of our response. We did it last summer, and it really goes back to that big goal of ours, which is just to monitor and then respond quickly whenever we have any concern. So we'll have antigen rapid tests at camp with the guardian consent. We'll administer a test, we'll wait, we'll get the results, we'll call you back, we'll let you know. If your camper is negative, then we'll just talk through a standard response and care with our healthcare staff. So that's going to include quarantining until 24 hours free of fever and vomiting. In the case of if we're concerned about allergies or something like that, we'll talk that through in relationship to your camper's just health history and make a plan. If we are taking the camper out of base camp for any symptoms like fever or vomiting or major cold symptoms, then we'll do another test before they come back into base camp. All of our quarantine will take place in what's called Hart Lodge. It's just at the top of our hill. There is Wi-Fi there. There's a phone there. Our nurse and our healthcare supervisor will supervise that. And we got into a really good group with this last summer and just found that it was a great way to make sure that everybody could rest and recover, and we could make sure that we were keeping the rest of the population from getting sick. If during that quarantine period a camper did test positive, then we would let the caregiver know and they would go home for 10 days. So if we do have a camper that is exposed to COVID-19 at camp and doesn't have any symptoms, then the response is going to be depending on if they're vaccinated or not. So if a camper is unvaccinated and they're exposed to COVID-19 at camp, so that would happen because we did have a positive test, and then we would evaluate who was exposed, and Massachusetts has a good guide and criteria for that. Then we will contact the caregiver and the camper would need to go home for 10 days. And we would make that contact and follow through on that as quickly as we possibly could in a day. If a camper is vaccinated and does not have symptoms, then the state of Massachusetts does allow for basically a test to stay with a mask protocol. So for camp, that's going to mean that the camper can stay at camp. We would test on day 5, and they would wear a mask during the day. We are going to wait and really look at a case-by-case situation in terms of if the camper is going to stay and sleep in their cabin or if we would have these campers do quarantine sleeping at night. We didn't have any COVID or any COVID exposures last summer, and last summer only about half of our campers were eligible to be vaccinated. Most of our campers who were eligible were vaccinated. So we're going to need to see on a case-by-case basis just sort of what exposure looks like. For example, if a whole entire cabin is exposed and the whole cabin is vaccinated, and the whole cabin doesn't have symptoms, then that cabin would just continue to sleep as normal in their cabin, and they would mask when they were out in the rest of the camp. If we end up with situations that are a little bit more complicated than that, then we'll be in touch with families so that you know exactly how we're handling where campers are sleeping and how we're doing the test to stay on a day-to-day basis. I really want to focus just a little bit on things that families can do to help. And then we'll just get into open questions, and anything that, that people have for questions, I'm happy to answer. So one of the biggest things that I want to focus on today is if you have any open tasks, if you've been getting annoying emails from UltraCamp, if you have a little red alert when you open up your profile, if you have not logged into your camper's profile in a long time, I'd ask that you do that and make sure that all of the forms are filled out and everything has been uploaded. So some people have submitted forms directly to our camp office, but just please remember that there's still the camper health history with allergies and over-the-counter medication approvals and the approval to treat and all sorts of things in there that are really essential for our nurse to get things ready for this summer. I also just want to remind all caregivers to please be thorough when you're doing that health history so that we can prepare accordingly. We also have an open house coming up on June 11th. Bunks are available for 1-week sessions. So please, if you know youth who would benefit from camp, encourage them to be in touch. And if they can come out to camp on June 11th, or if you're interested in seeing it, we'd welcome you out there. We're also have camp open every Saturday until then. So if June 11th doesn't work for you, but you'd like to see camp, you can just send me an email, and we have volunteers out there. You can get a tour, you can go out. It's a beautiful way to spend a day. And then lastly, we're getting ready to pack for camp. And I'm really big this year on emphasizing with everyone that campers need to be a part of packing. So it's really essential that campers know what's going into their suitcases or their trunk or their bins. They need to know what's in there. They need to know what actually went with them to camp, and then all that stuff needs to be labeled. So please pack with your camper. We just find that if it gets packed for them, the likelihood that they'll have no idea which flashlight is theirs or what shampoo went off to camp for them or whether or not they even had a yellow t-shirt, like all of those things can get pretty confusing. So I'll pause here, and I might stop sharing and see if there are questions. Went through a bunch.
I have a non-safety question that I thought of while you were talking about clothes. Are you guys going to be offering laundry again over the weekend?
Yeah, so for 2-week sessions, we'll have laundry. It's going to be $14 a load this summer, and it comes out of your camper's camp store. And some campers or some families choose to send clothes for 2 weeks. I know, Kara, you have to get on an airplane, so I don't recommend that to you guys, but it's really up to the family whether or not you want to. The packing list is really designed for 1 week at a time. Hi, Hayden. It's really nice to have campers on. So if anybody has any questions about this summer, I'm happy to answer them. And if we don't have more questions, then I'm just going to make sure to share my email again and contact information. And I'm also going to stay on for just a little bit. If you're new to our program, I have more information. Earlier in the year, we also were doing a presentation just generally about camp, and I have more of that information. So if you want to stay on for a little bit, I'm happy to go into any specific areas of the actual camp. Yeah, go ahead, Early.
Okay, so since me and my son is new to the camp, I know we're going to be overnight. So do like the laundry thing, the laundry bag. So do I bring laundry detergent for my son, or don't bring them?
That's a really great question. So you don't need to bring laundry detergent. We use The actual brand can change sometimes, but we use whatever simple and clear. Am I getting that terminology right? I feel like I buy this kind of, but we use something like without scents and without dyes. If you have any specific questions about the actual detergent, you can get in touch with me, but we'll provide it and campers don't need to bring it themselves. That's a great question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to share. And I'll stay here. So other questions, you can email me. My email is there. Just a reminder that we have that open house. And I do always like to wrap up with a little bit of information about our parent nonprofit, which is Smith Park. They're a volunteer, alumni-led nonprofit organization. They operate our camp program. They take care of our facility. We do have need-based scholarships for overnight camp and family camp. And it's Smith Park who hosts those weekends, every single weekend in spring. So if you're looking for an escape or even just a half day out in beautiful fresh air, just let me know and I can make sure that that someone anticipates you coming out. And again, I said this at the beginning, I can't say it enough. Whatever questions you have, whatever your concerns, whether it's about how we're thinking about COVID-19 for this summer or really anything else about the camp program, please do email me. The camp office is going to be closed tomorrow through Monday, but Tuesday we'll be back. And it's really helpful when we can connect and just partner on this really exciting time of getting ready for camp. So I want to thank everybody again. And that's going to wrap up this part of the presentation. And I'm just going to stay on. And if anyone has any specific part of the program that you'd like to go into more detail on, like our schedule or more things about our goals and things like that, then you can just let me know. Thank you, everybody.
I think most people have gone, but Lily, I had a question about Henry specifically. What day do I have to drop him off?
So the question that I had for Henry, so I'm glad that you're bringing it up. The question that I had for him was when his last day of school is, because I know he's still in high school.
Yes.
Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't, because I don't know what exams he has, like the one Regents that just got canceled. So I don't think he has to take that anymore. I will go over his last day of school schedule and I'll email you that.
So I think when I talked to him, I think I said the 25th, because that's the day before that first session, and that should be after everything is done with school. But just let me know so we can review it.
Okay. So would the goal be to get him there as early as possible?
Not necessarily, actually, because I also just want him to be able to have a smooth transition in. So I think if he has exams and stuff that week, then the easiest is gonna be for him to come out the 25th.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then for the overnight trip for teen camp, do they need to have that backpacking thing?
I'm gonna send an update on that tonight. So campers do not need to like purchase a frame pack just for this summer, is always how I say it. Sometimes campers already have one, or like a family member has one, and having some campers have them helped because we have ours alone. But we don't necessarily have one for every single camper. So if they do have one to bring, that's great, but it's not required. The most important thing for teen campers is that they have shoes that are already broken in, that are lightweight, and that are really comfortable, that have some amount of stability to them. So not Converse or that type of sneaker, but more like a running shoe or something that you would like use in gym class, old school style. No, not like the big chunky high tops either. We're looking for something that's like comfortable, that they would feel good walking in. But definitely not brand new is the most important thing.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you did come in late, maybe we can put it in the chat. I think maybe it's already there, but we do have this all recorded. And I'll also send out the slides. Any other questions or areas that folks would like me to go into when it comes to the program? Or if anybody has something they want to back up about when it comes to COVID, I'm really happy to answer questions on anything.
Hi there, this is Ann Ogilvie, and I'm on with Stell, and we are new campers, but didn't have a chance to attend, hadn't even signed up during the first session that you had. So if you could talk about the schedule and things like that, that would be great.
Great, yeah, no problem. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment so I can go to the schedule. I'll start with our program overview. All right.
Philip, you're not working, bud.
All right. Here we go. So first, just giving like a big picture snapshot of our camp. We usually have about 66 campers. They're from 8 years old up through our leadership program, which goes up to 16. Everybody sleeps on the same row of cabins, and there's 6 to 8 campers per cabin with 1 to 2 counselors. With all of our campers under 12, it'll be
Where
2.
Allie's going.
And that's true for most of our teen camp cabins as well. We are at a beautiful site on 450 acres in Southfield, Massachusetts. We've been there for a very long time. Many of our buildings are over 90 years old. We have all of our programming when we're in what's called base camp is really like tucked down in a valley on those 450 acres. We're right on the edge of the lake. It's actually a pond called Harmon Pond, but it's deep, it's spring fed, so it swims like you're in a lake. We have big ball fields that are up at the top of our hill. We have a big field right where all our campers sleep right by. And then we also have campsites around the lake, and we have hiking trails. Lots of different places to play ball games, basketball, ping pong, gaga ball, volleyball, soccer. I'm not even naming all of the things that we play. We have a huge wraparound porch. We play lots of board games, card games, Magic the Gathering, kind of most ways that you would find to pass time and have fun, we do out at camp. We have our 2 main programs, which are base camp and teen camp. Those are our biggest programs. Then leadership camp is smaller. That's for 15 and 16-year-olds. It's a 4-week program just in July, and an application is required for that. So much of what we do happens on the water. So we open up our waterfront for activities 2 to 5 times a day. Everybody swims for swim lessons. If you're in base camp, those happen in the afternoon, and they're based on swim ability. And then how much more you get on or in the water is going to be based on camper interests. But we have many different kinds of boats, and we open up for boating at a bunch of times in the day. And then we have our different swim areas, and we open up for swimming. We have no Wi-Fi reception. We have no cell reception, and we leave our personal screen devices at home. And then here's the schedule, if it will let me go to it. We get up at 7:30 in the morning. We tend to go back to our cabins at 8:30 at night. How and what time bedtime happens will happen on a rolling basis, depending on the age of campers. And then during the day, we have our meals together in our dining hall. Campers will eat with their cabins. And then we spend some time in the morning taking care of our camp. We do chores for the whole camp, which rotate every day. Then we also do chores inside cabins just to keep them organized. We start off our day with a morning activity, which tends to be the whole camp together. Sometimes it's based on cabins. Then we have a free time, and our waterfront is opened. And then in the afternoon, we take a rest hour, which has been wildly popular lately. I mean, I loved it when I was a camper too. And then we have 3 blocks of activity choices in the afternoon. So that's that block at the top, 2:15 to 5, is really broken down into 3 different activities. And those happen from Camper Choice. It's there's a variety of different things to do. So we'll open up archery, swim lessons will happen during that time. Different types of boating will happen. Different crafts, both in our arts and crafts lodge. We do pottery at camp. We'll have different sports options depending on interest. We often have hikes in the afternoon. And then also we'll have staff that will bring in specific skills and different passions like debate or dance or different things based on their experiences that will get presented to campers, and campers will choose what they want to do. Then we have more free time after dinner, and at night we do another big camp activity. Are there questions about the program structure or about the schedule? And Anne, if there's questions about other areas too, I'm happy to respond wherever there's interest.
Thank you. That was really helpful. We both enjoyed hearing a lot about it. So thanks for going through all that for us.
Awesome.
So this was probably covered in the COVID stuff, but are the, when do the cabins intermingle and when are they just by, by cabin?
Yeah, so for this summer, our goal is going to be to have this schedule be an intermingled schedule as much as possible, and potentially from that first day. We're still really looking at community spread in the region to decide whether or not we'll do like a cohort, which is a cabin schedule, maybe for the first 24 hours or something like that. So where we've left it with the sort of cabin only schedule is to have that be on a session by session basis so that we can really look at, well, what's happening in a specific period of time, or if we have COVID at camp, it may be something that we respond by having cabin cohorts so that we can really make sure that we're mitigating any spread. So if we had a cabin schedule, then this basic outline would be done, but cabins would be staying together for these activities. Our typical schedule at camp is this schedule, but the only times that you're with your cabin is those meals and rest hour and bedtime. Sometimes for morning activity and evening activity, we'll be with cabins, but usually not for both in the same day. And when we do that, it's typically because we're doing some type of a project. Like we do a big carnival at camp. So in the morning, cabins will create a booth together, and in the evening they'll share the responsibility of staffing the booth, but they'll also get to move around to the rest of the carnival, and that activity you won't have to just be with your cabin that time. And otherwise, when it comes to activity choices, to free time and things like that, there are choices at camp. So some cabins or some friends within cabins will still choose to do things together, but it's very open to camper choice and doesn't need to be restricted in that way. Does that make sense, Mari? That's a great question. Any other questions about the program or logistics for this summer? Packing?
Not yet.
No problem. Well, I'm gonna, if people don't mind, I'll just mention, this is just some information about our staff. I'm just gonna go through and see if there's anything really helpful about our program. So most of our staff come from the Northeast. Some do come from places a little bit further away, like North Carolina this summer, Missouri. And then this summer, we're bringing back international staff, which I'm really thrilled about. So we have staff coming from Brazil, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic. We always have a licensed nurse on site. We certify our staff in CPR and first aid, and all of our lifeguards are Red Cross certified. Just a little bit about our food. This is our dining hall. It doesn't always look this festive. We do a really fun big dinner at the end of the session, which is called our banquet. So then we decorate it a little bit more than typical. But that's where everybody eats. And all of our meals have a hot dish. There's always sort of extra choice bars. So for breakfast, that's like a cereal and yogurt bar, and there's usually an assortment of fruit. And then for lunch and dinner, we have a salad bar, which we really try to keep stocked with all sorts of different things, from hard-boiled eggs to a bunch of different veggies. Sometimes there's extra salads there, like egg salad or bean salad or stuff like that, and a variety of greens. And then we have soup choices later in the day too. And if you haven't already, please make sure that you update your camper's health information with any restrictions they have. If you do have restrictive diets or needs or allergies, then all of those go into our planning, and our kitchen team will be able to respond and make sure that your camper is well fed. These are some of our special activities. I think I already mentioned them, some of them. We have a carnival. We have some options for day hikes. We do have some options for camping out on our lake. And then we'll have a dance or a movie night if it's a 1-week session. And we usually are able to do both of those if it's a 2-week session. And we always end with a candle ceremony, which is a really special part of camp. And I won't go into family camp for this, but there's our contact information. And I really do encourage any other questions to just get sent my way. All right, well, Mari and Ann, do you have any other questions? Awesome, well, thank you again. Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
Oh, just wanted to say thanks. We appreciated it. It was very interesting and we enjoyed seeing the pictures. Thank you.
Absolutely, great, thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a nice weekend.
You too. We'll see you on the 11th, hopefully.